Hello, hello. Holly here, coming to you today to talk a little bit about why saying no isn't selfish, it's necessary, and 3 ways that setting boundaries can help improve your life right away. So, the reason I'm talking to you about this today is that oftentimes I think as women, and especially as mothers, we get into the habit of saying yes to everybody else's needs but our own. And it can lead very quickly to burnout and resentment and frustration. So, I wanted to talk to you about first off, what are boundaries? I know you may have some familiarity with them depending on what you've read and what you do as a profession, but just to kind of briefly review, basically, at the very core, boundaries are about, my cat has some boundaries to communicate. Boundaries are about communicating what your wants and needs are, what you like, what you don't like, and in order to communicate them, we have to know what they are, right? And oftentimes, when we are in the habit of helping everyone else but ourselves, we lose sight of what our wants and needs are, or what it is that we like and what we don't like. We're in service of everybody else and what their wants and needs are and their likes and dislikes. So the reason this is important is that without knowing what our wants and needs are, without being able to communicate our boundaries, we, like I said, we burn out, we get resentful, we start getting irritated with our family and our friends and our coworkers and all of that. So we need to find a way to be okay saying no when we need to say no, and being okay with the discomfort that oftentimes arises around communicating our own boundaries. So I wanted to just kind of start by giving some pretty common, I think, examples of experiences people have around setting boundaries. The first one is having no experience setting boundaries. This happens sometimes when we didn't really have this modeled for us. Maybe our caretakers growing up didn't really have very good boundaries themselves. And so the expectation was that we wouldn't have them either. And when we don't have that experience, then it becomes even harder, I think, to figure out, well, how do I navigate that? So maybe you've learned about a little bit about boundaries, but you don't even know where to start. Another, I think, common example with boundaries is that you may have tried to set some boundaries at some point and it went really badly. And by badly, most often it's that other people don't react the way that you hope they will, or they react with frustration, impatience, judgment. You end up feeling guilty, feeling like you asked for too much, or that your needs weren't as important as somebody else's, and you're like, you know what, never again, don't want to do it. And the other, I think, pretty common response I get when I talk about boundaries and setting boundaries is that whether or not you've tried before, there's this fear that often comes up that, when I say what I want and what I need, and if it is different from what others in my life want and need, then there's going to be a conflict, and that could very well end up in me disappointing someone else or they're disapproving of me. And, when we've had a lifetime of basically going along with or being agreeable to other people's wants and needs, yeah, sometimes it can be tough to say, you know what, no, I don't think I want to do that, or I'm not going to do that for you. And others who come to rely on us saying yes all the time might get frustrated, or they might feel like, what the heck's wrong with you that you don't want to do this? And that is it's really important here. That is not your problem. It doesn't feel good to hear. It can feel really uncomfortable and even painful, and yet it is not your problem. How other people react to you setting boundaries is entirely their own problem to deal with. The best thing we can do in our relationships is to communicate what our wants and our needs are. So let me get into a little bit about why this is good for us, even though sometimes it can be uncomfortable and painful. So some of the things I wanted to talk to you about are what are some of the ways that it can improve our lives when we set boundaries. So the first thing is others know where we stand. So in our relationships and the people that are most important to us, most of the time, if they love us, they really actually do want to know what we like and what we don't like and what's important to us, what makes us feel good, what makes us feel bad, and how they can, meet us there, right? So when they want to do something kind for us, they need to know what it is that we are going to respond well to. And if we don't ever give anybody any information on that, they're just guessing. Or they think we like everything because we tell them we like everything. And that doesn't often feel good for others that we're in relationship with. It can feel like confusing at times, or maybe like they don't really even know us, right? Because honestly, they don't, right? If they don't know what it is that we care about most, what we like or what we don't like, they don't really know us very well. And we may not know ourselves very well. So being able to set boundaries, communicate those boundaries, lets other people know more about us. It lets them know how they can be in relationship with us in a positive way. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you will finally have more breathing room in your life when you set boundaries. So time to do things that you want to be doing, space to sit with your own thoughts and figure out what it is that you want in your life, what you might need in order to feel happier or more fulfilled. Without those boundaries, it's hard to find that time. It's hard to make that space. So a little bit can actually go a long way. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but just wanted to kind of start with that initial fact that when we set our boundaries, when we know what it is that we want or what we need, and we ask for it, we take that time for ourselves, then we really do have more things open up for us. The last thing is that in setting boundaries, we are actually modeling for others in our lives that that's important for them as well. Especially our kids, especially if you have girls. This is something that our society doesn't often teach, and that is that it is just as important for women and girls to have their needs met as it is for men and boys, and that we need, as girls, women, we need to know what our wants and needs are, and we need to be able to communicate that assertively and stand by that. And that as a mom, you can communicate that and you can model that for your children, boys or girls, doesn't matter. And they get those messages early on that this is actually a valid thing to want time for yourself, to be able to say no to something that you don't want to do. That's important. Those are important messages for them to learn. And when we say try to communicate that to them, but we don't actually do that ourselves, they're not really going to be able to learn those words. They're not hearing the words. They're just seeing what we're doing, and that's what they're really learning. So this allows you to model for your children the sometimes messiness of setting boundaries with other people in relationships, and how that doesn't always go great, but that it is still important. And it's still valid to be able to communicate your wants and your needs to the people in your lives, so that they can start to see, hey, mom is saying that she needs this time, or she needs this, she needs to say no to this thing because that is something she wants, and that's important. And if we say no to our kids, they might not like that in the beginning, but that is also important for them to see. It's like, okay, actually mom's needs are important. And when mom takes time for herself and she's doing something soul nourishing, she comes back to us more present and more engaged than she was before, right? So they get to see that in real time, and that's powerful. So those are the three things that setting boundaries can do for your life right now. And I just want to say in closing that once you begin to recognize what your boundaries are and figure out what it is that you want to communicate to other people, more and more room starts to open up. So you start small, right? Maybe you say, you know what, I need 5 minutes to myself every morning, maybe 10 minutes every morning, every evening. And I don't need anybody else to come in and interrupt me. It's my time to just do whatever I want to do. I need that space. You're going to hand off the kids to somebody else. Maybe you put the kids in front of a screen for a few minutes. I'm not saying you do it for hours on end, but just for a few minutes, and you go in another room and you close the door and you take that time for yourself and you breathe, or you just do nothing. And it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, right? So start with something that feels manageable. And those of you who might have really small children and feel like you're not sure how this is going to work, or multiple children, or maybe you don't have a lot of support, I'd love to hear your concerns or your responses to this. Let me know what it is that you've tried, what feels like it's not working, what is working. And let's start this conversation, because I think boundaries are one of the most important pieces to this puzzle of self-care and why we feel like we're so drained all the time. So yeah, that's it. I'm going to run, but I hope to hear from more of you soon, and I'm excited to get to know some of the new members that have joined this week. Hope all of you are hanging in there, and yeah, we'll talk soon. All right, thanks. Bye.